In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the front wheel bearing and hub assembly on this Toyota Prius. Let's get into it. Using a 21mm socket, we're going to take the lug nuts off and remove the wheel. Pull the wheel off. Using a 14mm socket, take these two bolts out. And if the pin starts spinning, then you want to get a wrench or even a pair of pliers to stop the pin from spinning. Grab the caliper, slide it off. Using a brake caliper hanger, I'm going to hang the caliper from the coil spring. Just make sure there's no tension on the brake hose. Taking a screwdriver, just pry the pads off, or just take them off. They just slide right off. Using a 17mm socket, take these two caliper bracket bolts off. And slide the bracket off. You can take a hammer, give the rotor a tap, try to loosen it up, or you can thread in some bolts that thread in those two little holes and just kind of press the rotor off slightly. This axle nut is pinned over right here. I'm just going to take a punch and just get underneath here. Just try to bend it back a little bit. Just a little, you don't have to go crazy. Using a 30mm 12-point socket, take the nut off. Remove the ABS sensor. I'm going to use a 10mm socket, get on the bolt. Remove that bolt. And grab the sensor and slide it out. Instead of using a 17mm socket, take these nuts off and this bolt. Separate the lower control arm from the ball joint. You can slide the axle out. Set that aside. We're going to remove this shield, but when we put it back, you want to make sure you put it back in the same location. You can see where the ABS sensor is going to go right there. I'm just going to mark right here, just so it's lined up when it goes back together. But you should be able to see where the hole is and get that lined up. Take a pry bar, just get underneath that little cup. Just going to give it a tap. Try to tap it out. Let's work it back and forth. There we go, pop it right off. Take these 4 bolts out. I'm going to use a 14mm socket. Out. I'm just taking a hammer, just give it a couple taps, separate it from the knuckle. To make it easier, I'm just going to reposition the ball joint and the control arm just so it has a little more stability when I'm hammering it. I just put a couple of the nuts on, just snug those down. goes. Slide it off. Take the shield off. Just going to use a wire brush, just clean out any corrosion on the inside of the knuckle. Just taking a thin coat of anti-seize, just put it on the knuckle. Just to prevent corrosion in the future. Take the wheel bearing and hub and the shield, slide that in place. It only goes on one way. Line that up through the knuckle. Take the bolts, get those started. Tighten those down. Torque these bolts to 41 foot-pounds. Take this shield, we're going to slide this back in place, make sure it lines up with the marks. And you can take a piece of wood and a hammer and just tap it on. Tap it all the way down. I can take the nuts off down below again. We temporarily put there. Separate the ball joint from the lower control arm. Take the axle. Slide the axle back in place. Put the ball joint back into the lower control arm. Get the bolt started. The two nuts. Now torque this bolt and these nuts to 66 foot-pounds. Put the spindle nut on. With a pry bar going between the studs to prevent this from spinning. And we're going to torque this spindle nut to 159 foot-pounds. Now take a punch and we'll just peen over the nut. Just a little bit, that should be good. Install the ABS sensor. That lined up. Put the bolt in. And just snug that down. Take some anti-seize and just on the hub surface, just go around, just a thin coat. Just don't get it on the studs, just on the hub surface. Take the rotor, slide it over the hub. To make it easier, take a lug nut, put it on so that it holds the rotor on while you're trying to put it back together. Take the bracket, slide it over the rotor, take the two bolts, get those started. Torque these bolts to 81 foot-pounds. Take the brake pads, slide those in position. The one with the squealer or the brake warning indicator is going to go on the inside at the top. Take the caliper off the hanger, slide the caliper over the brake pads. Put the 2 bolts in, get those started. I'm going to use some pliers to hold the pins and tighten these down. Torque these bolts to 25 foot-pounds. Remove the lug nut. Take the wheel, line it up. Put the lug nuts on. Now I'm going to torque the lug nuts down to 80 foot-pounds in a cross pattern to tighten the wheel down evenly. Just go around again, double check.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.